The Jerusalem Assembly, Life on the Covenant Path, a scroll of restoration. There is a path that runs from the foothills of Sinai to the streets of Jerusalem, from the teachings of Moses to the voice of Yeshua, from the prophets' cries to the footsteps of the apostles as they move through the temple's courts. It is not the path of ideas or institutions, it is the path of covenant. Stone under the feet, prayer rising like breath, justice weighed at the gate, bread broken at the table, obedience lived in the home, love carried from household to household like fire on a lamp's wick. This book is written to restore the lived daily life of the first-century assembly in Jerusalem, not as an institution, not as a religion, not as a system built in the image of nations, but as a covenant-bound household walking the way of Yeshua. It is an attempt to pick up the threads the apostles wove and return them to those who desire to walk the ancient path with clarity and faithfulness. The Jerusalem assembly was not a weekly gathering or a formal structure. It was a people shaped by the teaching of the apostles, joined at the table of Yeshua, strengthened by the breath of the Ruach, purified through obedience and ordered by the wisdom of elders who guarded the gates of the community. Their life together was simple, rugged, and full of weight. Every stone they placed, every prayer they lifted, every portion of bread they shared, every act of generosity, every burden they carried, all of it bore the stamp of covenant loyalty. This book serves as a foundational handbook for the Covenant Path movement, giving shape to a way of life that is older than any council, older than any empire, older than any tradition that drifted from the hill where Yeshua stood and the upper room where his followers waited. It offers a corrective lens for reading Acts and the apostolic writings, removing layers added by later generations so the reader may see the simple, steady rhythm of the first believers again. It is a practical model, not a theory. The life described in these pages can be lived. It is a life of morning prayers, shared tables, open households, fathers teaching children, elders guarding purity, songs rising at dawn, justice measured fairly, burdens carried freely, hope burning steadily. Though this book stands beside your greater work, contrasting two cities, this volume does not look to Babylon. It looks only to Zion, the city Yahweh chose, the household Yeshua restored, the assembly shaped by stone, table, gate, breath, path, boundary, and covenant loyalty. This is not an abstraction. This is the weight of the covenant lived with the body. This is the path of obedience walked with the feet. This is the love Yeshua commanded expressed with the hands. This is the endurance of the saints tested in real suffering. This is the hope of Israel carried through generations. This is the life Yeshua inaugurated and the apostles guarded. And this is the life the people of Yahweh are called to recover. Household of Yahweh, the people of the way. Covenant household. When Yeshua rose from the grave and stood among his disciples, the air around them changed. The stones beneath their feet felt new, as if the whole mountain waited for a command from its rightful king. He gathered them on a height in Galilee, a place where wind moves freely and voices carry far. And he spoke with the weight of heaven and earth in his words. From that height he sent them down again into the valleys, the courtyards, the narrow streets, and the households of Jerusalem, not to build a new institution, but to gather a people into one covenant family under his name. When they returned to the city Yahweh chose, they did not begin with buildings or positions. They climbed the stairs of an upper room and waited together like a single household breathing one breath. They lived in one accord because they carried one hope. They prayed with one voice because they served one master. They gathered in one place because the covenant had bound their lives together like cords joining tent poles. They were not crafting a religion. They were becoming a household, sons and daughters, widows and workers, fishermen and craftsmen, Galileans and Judeans, joined by the blood of Yeshua, anchored in his teaching, shaped by his walk. A household in ancient Israel is more than a dwelling. It is a lamp that carries fire through generations, a table where blessing is spoken, a gate where justice is weighed, a path where children learn the footsteps of their fathers, a shelter where life is guarded, a legacy handed from one set of hands to the next. The Jerusalem assembly stood as such a household, only larger. Rooms scattered across the city, tables multiplied, gates guarded by men of wisdom. Lamps burning in many homes, yet lit from one flame. The foundation of this household was Yeshua, the stone the builders cast aside, now set as the chief corner. The apostles did not merely speak of him, they built upon him. Every command he gave became a boundary stone. Every story he told became a marker on the path. Every work he performed became a pattern for their hands. He was their shepherd, their teacher, their king, their master, the corner that fixed every other stone in its right place. His words were not ideas to ponder. They were steps to walk. The 12 he chose during his ministry now carried his teaching like fire sealed within their bones. They stood beneath the people as foundation layers, not above them as rulers. They taught in the courts, judged matters too heavy for others, strengthened households, visited assemblies, laid covenant boundaries, and guarded the purity of the path. They were not priests replacing priests. They were craftsmen placing stones with steady hands, ensuring the house remained level and true. Then the day came when the Ruach HaKodesh rushed into the upper room like a storm wind. It filled the house where they waited and rested upon them like tongues of fire. They became living lamps, flames burning with Yahweh's own breath. That day, the house came alive. From then on, the Ruach guided their steps, opened the scriptures, united their hearts, gave courage in danger, warned of snares, directed their journeys, poured out wisdom, and strengthened their bones when blows fell hard upon them. Without breath, a body dies. Without the Ruach, the assembly would collapse. With his breath, they became a living temple. Men and women in Jerusalem soon called them followers of the Way. This name fit like a well-worn sandal. They were walkers of a path, not keepers of a system. The Way meant concrete steps, obedience to Yeshua's commands, faithfulness to Torah rightly walked, prayer rising at dawn, teaching in the courts, bread broken in homes, purity in conduct, justice at the gate, generosity to the needy, endurance under persecution, unity of heart, and hope in Yeshua's return. Every day carried the weight of covenant. Every night ended with lamps burning low over tables where bread had been broken, stories told, and blessings spoken. They did not wait for a weekly gathering. They lived as a household each day. Morning brought prayer. Afternoon brought teaching in the temple. Evening brought fellowship in homes. Widows received care. Poor households found help. Prophets strengthened weary hearts. Teachers opened scripture. Fathers guided their families. Elders guarded purity. The Ruach filled every corner of their life. This is where the covenant path begins in the city Yahweh chose, among the people Yeshua redeemed, within a household built from many households, breathing with the breath of Yahweh, walking with steady feet the path laid by the risen King. The mountain where Yeshua stood became the beginning of a road that wound down into the streets of Jerusalem and out into the nations. The stones they laid became the pattern for all who would follow. The fire that burned in that upper room became the light by which the world would see. And the Jerusalem assembly walked forward together, a single household carrying Yahweh's name, waiting for the day when their king would return and stand once more upon his mountain.